I've been sharing about welcoming and messengers, and last week we talked about challenging messengers, and I received a lot of positive feedback about that topic because it was something that was so alive for many people, and that still is. And if you're new to the practice and are confused or wondering what that is, just very briefly, messengers in meditation, the way I come to think of them is it's the content, it's what's arising. So a messenger might be a particular body sensation. It might be something in the breath pattern that you become aware of that grabs your attention. It could be an emotion or a thought, even a memory. It could be a random image that pops in. Anything that is kind of arising that gets your attention, that says, hey, over here. And that can happen in the real world as you're walking around, especially now. Nature is so happy. I can feel her on my walks. Things are so vibrant, and the birds and all the animals seem to be, I think, more friendly toward us. And I've sensed that. And so, even those kind of noticing a certain flower or being captivated by, a certain animal, that those are also messengers. So anything that's capturing our attention, and it's capturing our attention to kind of return us back to the truest essence of ourself, which is this unconditional quality of welcoming. And this unconditional quality of welcoming is more of an experience rather than a label and a bunch of definitions and, things to describe it. So I'll do my best with some of this language. And my hope is you get the flavor of it, but know that you might have your own feeling or experience or labels of words that you might choose when you're describing this feeling of being. When these messengers are calling you, it's to point you back to this sense of wholeness that's unconditioned. And there's a little metaphor that you might find helpful. And actually, there's a couple, but I'll share the one that seemed most potent for most people that I come across, and that's the sky and weather patterns. So this unconditioned quality, this feeling of being, which you might also hear as consciousness or awareness or presence. If you have a strong faith or worship practice, it might be some sense of source or divinity or something greater than yourself, but it's also an aspect of you. It's, this innate part of you. That's the sky. And the sky being, whether you think of blue sky or just kind of this empty void, but it's the sky. And the messengers, whether they're positive or negative, our preference, things we prefer to feel and experiences we are attracted to, or the opposite, things that might be challenging or that we would like to not have so much of. This is all weather. They're all weather patterns that are happening across this spacious sky. So the sky doesn't go away. The sky is always there. And you might even hear people say, underneath the clouds, the blue sky is there, or, phrases like that. And I think what it's pointing to is there's this sense of consistency and innateness that is so ever present, that is just welcoming and being and listening and attuned and attentive, that feels really like this empty container that is the sky. And it's basically allowing all of these weather patterns to move on through. And that can be really freeing to realize in meditation, that there's this part of me that's like the sky, and that there's all these other aspects of me, a lot of these messengers that are really weather patterns. And why that's freeing is because the weather's moving, the weather's changing, the weather's shifting. And so we know things will pass. And so a lot of times you might hear people say, oh, this too shall pass, and because it really will. In our meditative practices, we recognize that anything that's arising is arising from this home ground of being, or consciousness, or awareness, or God, or source, whatever this, like before the personality, before the experiences, before any of the limitations come online, there's just this sense of being. So I did my best to kind of describe, and in this quality of being, although it's kind of quality less, often people will experience love, compassion, joy, spaciousness. Maybe they feel a sense of courage or intimacy. There's a deep sense of listening. There's patience. There's a sweetness and a tenderness. So it's really more of a felt sense, and it will be unique to you. And being doesn't have to happen in just meditation or in these end phases of meditation. Being and feeling yourself as the sky, which can give us some space from some of these challenging weather patterns or messengers that you might be experiencing now. We really just can rest back and enjoy, that, life is living us. These things will pass. These are all just weather patterns. Some weather patterns stick around for longer periods than others, but these things will pass. So, and it's natural that we want to have experiences that are more what we would say positive or less uncomfortable. But again, all the messengers are pointing us back to that sense of being in awareness. So whether they're positive messengers or ones that are a bit challenging, they're pointing us home. And the challenging ones, will give us a real great opportunity for growth and understanding, which I think is what we're all entering into now. And so, knowing that they'll pass, knowing that it might be kind of full of drama, especially in these certain phases. When we talk about things passing, just before we dive into the meditation, because I'm going to point to it in our practice, are these 5 changing phases, or anything that is kind of arising from our awareness that's being born from nature will dissolve back into nature, or dissolve back into that home ground of being or consciousness. Whether it's a body sensation or an emotion, it kind of pops up like a wave and then returns back to the ocean. So when we feel that they're the most challenging is when they're kind of growing and stabilizing. But before that, there's an initial birth. So there's this first recognition. And I like to think of it like that's that moment where it gets your attention. My shoulder's stiff. I'm feeling a little sad. It's that initial moment. It's kind of born in you. And then you can watch how it builds. And then at that peak where it's stabilizing, that's where it appears to be the most challenging. And this is often where we kind of get hooked in and hinged. And again, that part is also natural. We're into some neuroscience here, which I'll talk probably more about next week, which is some really interesting information to know what's happening in the brain during these moments. Can also be freeing to know some of that information. So I will share that next week for sure. But just know that we're entering into this state when we're hooking in of like, it's all personal, it's happening to me. There has a tendency to be a negativity bias. So unfortunately, even if there are positive things we hook into, like we never want that experience of joy to end, or that, great experience we're having, we never want it to be over. We can hinge there too, but oftentimes it's when they're really uncomfortable, when it's displaying like anxiety or a bit of fear or, worry, that the hinges get really, really deep. Natural survival mechanism. But that's not the only experience we have here. We have this other, part of us that is that present centered network that turns on, and it is open and it is spacious. And it is, where we can meet these challenging messengers because we know they'll pass. So our 5 phases, everything's kind of being born from this ground of being. It's growing, it's stabilizing, and it's going to slowly like decay, decline, and then eventually dissolve. Now, I love body and breath work because you can see that happening. You can see how, like in certain movements, maybe you're holding a posture or form, and you first start there and it is intense. There's a lot of feedback. A lot of messengers are saying, my shoulder's not comfortable. You need an extra pillow here. And you can see how that's that initial, I'm landing in the pose and there's all this information. And then over time, that information will start to dissolve and you'll notice you quiet down and you almost have a sense of maybe losing track of time, especially in certain wonderful restorative postures or, very comfortable postures. You can see it in the breath. As you inhale, the birth, the growing of the inhalation is that growth phase. At the peak of the in-breath is where we're stabilizing. And then the exhale is that slow kind of undoing, unwinding, and then eventual dissolving back at the bottom of exhale. So you'll see the 5 phases in the body. You'll see the 5 phases in our breath, and our emotions and our thoughts go through that as well. So in our meditation tonight, we'll journey through body and breath, and I'm going to point you into these different parts, kind of like to notice how things are unfolding and then dissolving. And then I'll give you a period of a quiet space and time for you to welcome if there are subtler emotions or thoughts or memories or any challenging messengers that might have been around, this last week or over the weekend. You might, call them in and say, I'm here to listen. I'm here to be with you. I'm willing to see, where we're at. And you might realize some of this emotion you're feeling is already starting to dissolve. It's already naturally dissolving. Or maybe it's in the building process and you're just getting started. But it can be nice to know where we are on this natural flow. So we'll shift now into the meditative portion, and there will be a little period after for debriefing and questions, of course. So I see the people I see are very comfortable, but if you are still getting settled, do find your position for your practice. If you're new practicing with me, I encourage you to be comfortable, and for many that is lying down or reclining. You can lie on your side. We're in a unique situation right now, so you can really be in any position that you'd like, in any way that you'd like, with as many blankets or cushions or nothing at all. So as you turn attention kind of inward, make any last minute adjustments. Feel this as the time for settling in, preparing the body for comfort. That way, any excess motion in the mind can soothe and will eventually rest as still as the body. So as you are settling, invite the eyes to remain open just for a few breaths and let yourself take in the whole visual field that is present. Taking in color, forms, and shapes. Just feeling how the eyes are taking in information, the messengers of sight. And then allow your eyes to close, the lids beginning to soften. You might close the eyes and open the eyes, move back and forth a few times before the lids do close. And you feel more of an inner seeing come online. So perhaps there are colors, forms, and shapes playing on the screen of the mind. Maybe it's just a blank space or a void. Just noticing what's on the screen of the mind. And as we settle deeper into the felt sense of our being, letting the senses all open, being receptive to outer sounds as the ears receive and welcome the sounds in your space. Maybe some sounds of nature just outside your space. And any lingering taste And perhaps there's a fragrance or a perfume, a sense of smell. And deepening even more into the body, become aware of your shape and the form, how the body's arranged for comfort. And notice the parts of the body that are supported. Perhaps your seat and your legs, perhaps your back, the back of the head. Letting those channels of touch open and become aware of feeling held and supported in your space. How it's just the right temperature. How there's nothing more that the body needs to feel at ease here in this moment. How you've created a sense of resource, a feeling of well-being. So as this feeling of well-being shines through, coming online, we'll rotate attention through the body. And we'll journey through the body once from head to toes, and then come back and visit with a space or place in the body that is most alive and calling to us. So in this first rotation, imagine it's like doing a little inventory. What's the energy like here? What are the qualities? Is it feeling hot or cool, heavy or light? Is there a sense of dullness or brightness? So not to judge the body or try to fix the body, but meeting and welcoming the body from this unconditional ground of being. So beginning our rotation in the mouth, so sensing the tongue, the teeth, and the gums, the lips, the lower jaw, the upper jaw, feeling the whole mouth, sensing through the ears, inner and outer, to the cheeks and the cheekbones, to the nostrils, right and left, to the bridge of the nose and the space between the eyes, welcoming sensation all around the eyes, eyelids, eyes themselves, sense them like pools of sensation. What are you aware of just behind the eyes? Following sensation back behind the eyes, present to sensation within the skull, crown of the head, back of the head, back of the neck, root of the throat. Continue to scan with that loving attention through the shoulders, the arms, and the hands. Each fingertip, Sensing the aliveness, the energy of the shoulders, arms, and hands, right and left. Gather attention now to the root of the throat and feeling attention traveling down, heart center space, right side chest, left side chest, right upper back, left upper back, right side ribs, left side ribs. Sense the abdomen. Gather attention to your navel space. Sense here, like a laser pointed focus, right at the navel. And then opening attention to feel the whole abdomen all around the navel. Moving deep back behind the navel, sensing low back and low spine. Become aware of sensation in the pelvis and the hips. And the vibrant sensation that's flowing through the upper legs, the knees, lower legs, ankles, feet, and toes. Sense the legs, right and left, from hips to toes and toes to hips. And now welcoming the whole body from toes to head. Just entering into this whole body field. You're noticing various sensations that are arising and unfolding, and perhaps dissolving. And these may be subtle sensations of the body, momentary glimpses, or perhaps there is a particular sensation or location that is calling you, that is asking for your undivided attention. And you might let attention travel there into that sensation or to that location. And just for the next several cycles of breath, so a couple of minutes, we'll just linger here, noticing how this sensation that is calling to you as you meet it over many cycles of breath, giving it some time, some breathing room, how it might transform through those phases. And it may or may not, but it starts with giving ourselves the time. So feeling into this spacious moment, turn toward that location or sensation of the body. Meeting and greeting from that sense of being or awareness or God consciousness. And then might you notice how you are the one, this unchanging sense of being that is witnessing this transformation of body sensations. How that you have a body, that you are aware of your body, but you know that there's something else here. There's something greater that is present, that is living the body. This radiant energy shining through that is unconditioned, holding this experience of welcoming the body. And now that same loving, witnessing presence welcomes the breath. The breath has been here from the moment we began, body breathing itself with ease. This automatic process, ebbing and flowing. Turn attention toward your natural rhythm. And as you fully see and experience the breath, notice any conditioned response to shape the breath, or to try to elongate or count the breath. Can you set all of that doing aside and instead meet and be with the rhythm that is unfolding in you now? As you join into this natural rhythm of your breath, just come home to these different qualities. Is the breath flowing with ease, or is it a bit choppy? Is there a shallowness to the breath, or is there a deep sense of satisfaction, a deep quality? So really investigating and sensing the breath from the inside out and the outside in. And the natural rhythm is a comfortable place to rest for these next few minutes. Or perhaps you might explore the momentary pauses between the breaths. You might sense how the in-breath has its own natural flow and rhythm of cycle, of birth and growth and stabilization. The top of the in-breath, so full, so radiant, so much intensity. Feel that pause, that brief, relaxed quality of being here, that momentary pause. That same cyclical rhythm of exhale. See how that exhale starts, how it's birthed, and how it grows and becomes deep and full and satisfying, and that too eventually dissolves. And at the bottom of exhale, here is being once again. This stillness, this momentary quieting of body and mind before the birth of that next inhalation arises again in you, in this loving field of awareness. So continue to nourish yourself as this quality of being that is ever present, that the breath is arising from and dissolving back to. So journey along with your breath and these natural phases. If you find the mind is a bit scattered, you might count your breath cycles. Maybe counting backwards from 7 to 1. Each cycle of breath an opportunity to pause in that momentary stillness, the top of the in-breath and the bottom of out-breath. Just a moment or two longer here. You might return to this breath that is arising, unfolding, and dissolving in you. Or set attention free in this period of quiet reflection, where you'll hear my voice less and less. And in this time, you might invite in any messengers you've been working with, or just see what arises spontaneously. Remember that you are the sky. You are the container for which this meditative experience and all of life experience is unfolding. And so as everything arises from you, it dissolves back into you. This you that is the deeper quality, the unchanging being. So feel attention open and receptive to what is most calling in this moment. Continuing to meet your experience as it unfolds, just as it is. You might sense how these messengers are passing. Know that as we're beginning to conclude this practice, if there are messengers that are intense or wanting extra attention, let them know that you'll be back. And then do come back for them. You might continue to remain here and meet and welcome them as we continue on with this journey, or there might be another place and time for you to give a bit more space, a bit more attention to see how it might continue to transform as you welcome. And as for this meditative journey, as we come back into our humanness from this present centered quality of being that is beyond space and time, we invite in space and time. We recognize the need to come back into a waking state of mind, into this beautiful body that we've been gifted with to nourish and get to know, to listen to and to love. It is this body field that is responding, that is alive. And so, in that way, it's quite miraculous as a rich source of feedback for insight. So, invite that beautiful, radiant body of yours to wake up with some gentle stretches. This is an evening practice, so not too much intensity here, but you might want to bring the knees in toward the chest if you're lying down, or do a little rocking. If you're seated, you might begin to make some circles with the torso, just feeling the body, feeling a bit of movement and aliveness. And as you do, as you come into that body field, let the senses open. So you'll hear and smell and potentially taste. And over time, the eyes will softly open and sight will come back online, and color and form once again are here, are present. Right? Thank you so much for, taking this time to practice. Really, I think what makes messengers less and less challenging is the more we practice, the more attention we give. And if there's a bit of attention, we're allowing things to transform naturally. Attention is a active ingredient in meditation, and I think in, welcoming challenging material. So just from my practices and what I've seen with people, that level of attention that we bring to our practices is really key. And I've shared on that in the past. So there are some, videos on that on the YouTube for you on welcoming and messengers that kind of lead up to some of more of this challenging messenger content. So I do very much appreciate you, and thank you so much for listening.